The last three chapters of The Leopard are, in a sense, mop-up duty for the logic of the book. The Fabrizio family is a superfluous family. We see this in The Ball, where Angelica is introduced to polite society in Chapter 6. We see it in the death of Don Fabrizio in Chapter 7. And in the fading away of the old spinster sisters in Chapter 8. Much time is covered in these last three chapters. Chapter 6 is set in 1862, while the revolutionary fervor is still hot. Chapter 7 is set in 1888, and there the prince dies. Chapter 8 is set in May 1910, when the relics of the old sisters are questioned by a new modern church interested in limiting the influence of superstition. So the chapters cover about 50 years. Well, the first 5 chapters covered only a matter of 2 years or so. The logic of the new order works its way out. Chapter 6 is the bridge between the two sections of the book. The logic of modernizing works its way out there. Don Fabrizio recognizes his superfluity. It might truly be said that Don Fabrizio had adopted a stoical perspective about the changes throughout the book, but that comes through manifestly in Chapter 6 on the Ball. Don Fabrizio is entranced, it seems, by the beauty of Angelica Tancredi match. They were the most moving sight at the ball. 2 young people in love, dancing together, blind to each other's defects, deaf to the warnings of fate, deluding themselves that the whole course of their lives would be as smooth as the ballroom floor. Unknowing actors made to play the parts of Juliet and Romeo by a director who had concealed the fact that tomb and poison were already in the script. Neither of them was good. Each was full of self-interest, swollen with secret aims. Yet there was something sweet and touching about them both. Those murky and ingenious ambitions of theirs were obliterated by the words of jesting tenderness that Tancredi murmured in Angelica's ear, by the scent that he smelt from her hair, by the mutual clasp of bodies that were destined to die. How ridiculous. It all looks from the perspective of eternity indeed. The grasping of the mayor looks like someone who is willing to ignore his soul for a small price. The love and entrancement of our featured grouping look fleeting and are fleeting from the perspective of eternity. Don Fabrizio's family indeed is passing, and it helps him to adopt this proper perspective. Yet he is called from this stoical resignation by a colonel from the old order, one who had fought for the king, knowing exactly what the cause was. The new order, this colonel suggested, would be a huge irrational disaster. And the fact that Italy has remained under a lucky star in the past brings no comfort, since stars were fixed only in appearance, as everyone knows. Luck can change and will change. Don Fabrizio feels his heart contract at these disquieting prospects. Well, I will not go into details. The supper, where Don Fabrizio is invited to sit aside Tancredi and Angelica, proves to teach Don Fabrizio his ultimate superfluousness. He has resigned himself to his nothingness in this new order. And this nothingness we see in Chapter 7. Stella, his wife, was dead by Chapter 7. So was Father Perrone. Today it is Don Fabrizio's turn. His whole life, he feels, has been blameworthy, in that he could not perpetuate his type. This contrition the new priest takes for confession. His grandchildren, from his boys that is, were useless, odious, taken with the middle-class ethic. The significance of a holy, noble family lies in its traditions, that it is in its vital memories. And Don Fabrizio was the last to have any unusual memories, anything different from those of other families. His new priest comes for the last sacraments, he administers them, and Don Fabrizio fades away. So does his type. He lives on only in his daughters, untainted as his sons had been tainted by the new movements toward democracy, modernity, and Italy. Marriage now means compromise with the new order, and these daughters, his pride and joy, were not so tainted. They are also spinsters. No taint had meant no progeny, and no perpetuation of the family in essence, though its name might live on in his compromised sons. The chapter's central action consists of 2 visits, one from Angelica and one from the Vatican to check up on the family's chapel. The visit from Angelica is delicious. She arrives, and Lampedusa celebrates in intimacy that is similar, he says, in closeness and feeling to that which was to bind Italians and Australians in their opposing trenches a few years later. End quote. Angelica is one who is to help celebrate the 50th anniversary of the March on Naples, and the new Italy is putting a lot of stock in this. Tancredi had died, indeed, and Angelica was picked to be on this committee to celebrate the march that Tancredi, who became a substantial man in the new order, had played no small part in. Angelica's old lovers among the senators made sure that the now quite old Angelica played the role that she is playing on this committee. Her friend, Senator Tassoni, comes to visit the old sisters as well, Concita especially, recounting stories of those young men, Tancredi and his one-time friend, who had loved Concita. Concita's old, cold heart almost melts. How she spurned love is indeed part of her history and of her family's history. Lampedusa writes this: there had been no enemies, just one single adversary, herself. Her future had been killed by her own imprudence, by the rash Selina pride. And now, just at the moment when her memories had come alive after so many years, she found herself even without the solace of being able to blame her own unhappiness on other. A soul, which is the last deceiving sphincter of the desperate. Her barrenness and spinsterdom, chosen out of pride, out of feeling that no one was worthy of her, left her alone with her pious, superstitious, equally lonely sisters. Thus prepares the visit from the Curia about the family's chapel. Carolina, Concita's superstitious sister, had been buying relics of questionable authenticity for years and decorating the family chapel with them. Wood from a coffin of this saint, pictures of that saint. These such items she collected, and it is pretty clear that her credulity had been indulged by Concita and taken advantage of by local relic finders. The Vatican is coming to investigate the authenticity of these relics. They are mostly fakes, says the prince from northern Italy. Concita had known that, and she commences a cleaning house of the old relics, including family heirlooms such as the stuffed dog that her father had loved so much. The novel's last words, articulated after the dog's carcass had been thrown into a corner, is that, quote, all found peace in a heap of livid dust. And so it is with the family. So the Fabrizio family, properly understood, dies out. They were Stoics and Catholics, both of whom take the perspective of eternity and see the fleeting corruptions of the present as having too little hold on them. These two perspectives do not exactly mix perfectly, though they are the defining philosophies of that old order. Neither gives rise to much zeal. Neither justifies ideological action or fervor. The family does not even really act in any way to save itself. They simply fade away in the new revolution. So do their virtues. What the world looks like without them? Well, that is the reason we have windows, my friends. I hope that you enjoyed this small set of videos on Giuseppe Lampedusa's The Leopard.